Hey, welcome to another edition of Late Night with Larry. I'm here with my co-host Vince. Vince, give him a shout out.
Hey, welcome back. We're in our satellite studio here in the Southwest, the South Valley.
That's right. We are in our second studio, and we're not up in the Hamas as we've been. And you've heard some of our episodes where we're up in the Hamas. They're going to shut it down, so we'll be in the studio till they open it back up, or we may have another place that we can go squatching that may be accessible.
Right. Now, there's a place close by, even closer. We've heard stories about sightings, and I'm not going to say where it is yet, but I was up there yesterday. I thought, I don't know if I believed one would be out there. But I was up there, and I'm like, yep, it's thick, and they have deer. We know they have bear. They have a lot of animals.
Right.
So I told my brother I'm starting to change my opinion on Sasquatch in this area. So we're going to go check it out, maybe hike a trail and just see what we could find.
We're going to see what it's all about. All right, so tonight we want to talk about Ron Moorehead. He recently did a YouTube video and it was a presentation on Sasquatch.
Right.
Now, on this video, I sent it to my brother because it was so interesting because there were so many more Sierra sounds than we heard on just the regular recording.
Right.
But what was special about this one is he had these voices vetted by actual scientific people in the community.
Right. Linguist specialists.
Right. So the linguist specialist he had was Navy retired linguist specialist.
Right, but other people in the same field looked at it.
Right. What was interesting is the reporter that went with him, Al Berry. He was a reporter that wanted to go up there, but
Right.
his whole outlook was, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to prove that you guys, it's a hoax, that someone's hoaxing you.
Yes.
And they went up there in 1972. Now, Ron Moorehead and his friends have been hunting up there for years, but they had interactions from, what did you say, 1971 to 74?
Yes.
And
Close interactions.
real close interactions.
Now, he said after 74, I guess they had to kill a bear in the camp.
In the camp is what he said.
Once they killed the bear, they still heard things, but they were just off in a distance, and every year they just got further and further away.
Right, and I think they saw him kill the bear, and they thought, oh, no, we're not going to get close to these guys.
Right.
So it was interesting. I don't know, what did you think about the whole...
You know what? I liked it. He's a well-spoken person. I was very interested the whole way through, and he really did his homework. And I like how he expanded on the Sierra sounds. He also played some sounds we hadn't heard before, but he also got into quantum science and other possibilities.
Right.
And it was one thing that stuck with me that he kept saying throughout the whole presentation was, keep an open mind.
He did say that. He did say that. He said the physical evidence and the quantum evidence, and he did say, got to keep an open mind about this, because too many people are just closed-minded, and they say, well, if we don't have a body, we don't have evidence.
Right.
And I just loved the presentation. I thought it was well done. It was interesting. I mean, from start to finish, he had my attention.
Right.
And not just because I'm interested. If I would have been a skeptic and heard this talk and heard the vocalization, I would still been amazed.
Right. The vocalization I still listen to them now, and they just blow me away.
I know. Well, these vocals were studied by the University of Wyoming for a year.
Right.
And they came to the conclusion that they are human in nature, but they're not human.
Right. Now, they were talking about the frequency spectrum. Now, there's a lot in the human vocal range, but he said there's also some above and below, so
Right.
that throws out a hoax right there.
It does. And what caught my attention is when they read it, and you hear the studies they did, they said that you needed what was it, hyoid bone? It's a bone we have in here.
Oh, right.
The hyoid bone.
To speak a language.
Right. That's what helps the vocalization. And everyone said, we're the only animals with it.
That's
and
why primates cannot talk.
That's right. They don't have that bone.
Right.
And after all these linguistics and these scientists studied it, and they said, these are vocalizations. They have their own language.
Yes.
The words they speak, they're even supposedly phrased in a sentence, and they called it morphine stream. And what did he call it? It's sapien sentences.
Right.
That's what he called it.
It was sapient or something. There was a word he used to make it humanized.
Right, and that's because we're Homo sapien sapien, so they're called sapien.
It's he said something. He called it sapience.
Sapiens, yes, sapiens. Well, it's spelled SAPIENT. Sapient.
Okay, all right.
Sapient.
Yeah, but now they did conclude that it was a language. Now they don't understand it. They don't know what they were saying,
Right.
but just the rhythms of it and how they were speaking back and forth. They said it's a language, and like you said, they studied it for a year. Now there was another doctor. I'm guessing it was a female doctor. I can't remember her name, but her part was taken out.
Right. She was one of 10 in the state of California that can analyze these type of languages.
Right.
And yeah, they didn't tell her that they already had it vetted.
Right.
But yeah, she came to the same conclusion. What was interesting is they took this language and they took it to several different professionals, and
Yeah.
after everyone reviewed it, they came to the same conclusion that this is some type of human. And they said, well, at first they said, well, these are just human voices and noises played forward or backward, or
Right.
they were manipulated. But after they studied them, they came to the conclusion, no, this can't be manipulated.
Right. You're right. They're not manipulated.
They're not manipulated. Excuse me.
Yeah, and I thought it was very interesting because one technique Sasquatch researchers use is to go out in the field and blast pre-recorded Sasquatch sounds.
Right.
And Ron Moorehead, it cracked me up the way he said it because he don't recommend it.
Right.
He said, we know this is a language, they have a language, but I don't recommend you blasting out these sounds because we don't know what they're saying.
Right, we don't.
Yeah.
But it was interesting how he talked about all these recordings they got. They would have to get into the camp, into their little structure, and put the microphones out to get them to record, and they would only interact once they were in the structure. But he said that the one time, he said, now this is where I get to see them. He said from that time on, they interacted when they were out of the structure.
Yeah.
And that's why he said, we didn't always see him, but on occasion, he said, this is the night I saw him.
Right.
And he was bobbing from tree to tree.
Right. Now, tell them about the print, the big one. That really impressed me.
Well, he said that they found, if I remember correctly, a 26-inch footprint
Yes.
with a 13-foot stride.
Right.
And I'm like, holy cow. So how big do you got to be to do? Our stride rate is about 3 foot.
Right.
I'm 5'8", and my stride's about 3 foot. So
I'm more than 4 times our stride.
that's huge.
Right. And I don't know how to do the math, how they figure all that out, but that's got to be one of the biggest ever reported.
Right. Well, the strides on a normal Sasquatch, they say, is 8 foot.
Right.
About 7-8 foot stride, and those are what, 8-9 foot Sasquatches.
Yeah.
So for this one to be that, we're talking 12-15 foot.
Yeah.
12-15 foot. Now, when they played some of these sounds, it was amazing. And when they said they named them, like one was the I have them here, the when they do the whoops, the type of messaging, which was the rocks where they clacked them.
Right.
The whoops, the talking to each other, and then the breathing, which they said the one had, they said he had asthma.
Yeah.
And then it was a joke because they didn't know, but
Right, but he was close. You could hear the breathing.
you could hear it, and it did sound like he had a lung problem.
He was wheezing.
Wheezing. Sounded like me, folks. But yeah, it was interesting. I just don't know what to make of those sounds, man. Because
Right. They're amazing. I know if I was out in the forest alone and I heard that, it's time to pack it up and get out of there.
Yeah, it is. I would definitely leave. And do you remember what they called the sounds when they just like were sitting there going, ooh, ooh, ooh. They had
he said it was a display.
display, yeah.
Yeah, and he don't know if it was meant to scare him off or like maybe a bluff display, you know, to show the
Right.
power. But it was almost like they were shaking their head like that.
Right, and he called that one a display, and then the other one, they had names for some of the sounds
Right.
they made. And when they were whistling, that one was cool when he said, "That's me." And then when he would talk back, some of them sounded like they were growling.
Yeah, yeah,
And here's what tripped me out. That growling sound is, do you remember on the Sasquatch video that we watched with, man, I'm going brain dead. What's his name in Canada?
Oh, with not
Les Stroud.
He's the guy, the controversial guy.
Yes. Yeah, his name's not coming.
I
to
could
me.
see his face.
Right.
Les Stroud went out with him.
They did.
He has that documentary Discovering Bigfoot.
Todd Standing.
Todd Standing. There you go.
So, do you remember when Todd Standing was there with the flare?
Yeah.
And you heard the growl?
Yes.
That sounded exactly like the one up there.
Yeah.
So that to me lent a lot of credibility to Todd Standing.
Standing, right.
Unless Todd Standing was able to get these recordings from Ron Moorehead and manipulate it into his recording, which I don't know, man. It was pretty genuine.
It's possible in this day and age with the software, but I mean, if he would do that, he would take a chance of somebody just saying, "Hey, I've heard that here. That's a hoax."
Well, we could take and we have software to say no, that was cut, spliced,
Right.
and put in, and no one's done that yet. So, and people have tried to debunk him, saying, "Oh, he's great at animatronics," and so
Right.
they're saying the faces he shot are fake,
Right.
you know, and they're trying to debunk it. But I'm like, well, what about what he recorded out there?
Right. And you know, animatronics, you have to have money to do that.
A lot of money, and who's going to carry that much equipment
Way out there.
in the forest just to do that?
Right.
I mean, he didn't make $1 million off this documentary. He did it because his main goal is to protect.
Preservation.
Of
He wants
stuff.
them protected. And,
Right. He wants them to have, because we do say they have human DNA. He believes they should have the protection and the human rights we do,
Right.
which is you can't kill them, you can't hunt them. It'll become a crime.
Right.
But anyway, I just thought that was interesting. And back to Ron Moorehead's little speech there.
Right. Now, what really impressed me about Ron Moorehead is we're talking about Sasquatch, and he talked about in the Sierra Sounds, other experiences he had, but he said, but today we're going to talk about Sasquatch. But he took it a step further, and he's talking about quantum science and how everything works on a frequency. And
Right.
when he was talking about people saying they see them disappear.
Right.
Now, he said, when I first heard people say that, you know, I thought, man, this guy's a crackpot or whatever. And he said, but once I got into quantum science and we're working in different dimensions, you know, sight, sound, whatever, he's like, everything from the subatomic level works from frequency. And if you could change that frequency, you know, you could disappear. You could.
Well, that's kind of how the military's trying to cloak.
Right.
It's frequency.
Right.
And he had a good, valid point. It's just amazing that how this topic has like sucked me in and made me look at the forest, I look at the woods in a total different
Right. So do
light.
I. So do I. Especially, we come across people who talk about, you know, seeing them disappear and
Right.
and portals. And now I don't know, are there actual portals or do they disappear? And Ron also touched on aliens visiting. He said it's an ancient script. They visited and they altered our DNA, and Sasquatch might be a hybrid.
It may be.
And another theory out there is a super soldier that the government was working on that got away.
Well, here's my thing. We know that the Russians have tried to hybrid human DNA with
Animals.
with ape.
Yeah.
They had. I seen a video of a hybrid chimp with human DNA. It was the ugliest thing you saw, but it died. It didn't
Right.
make it. But you know, who's to say that it didn't? That the aliens didn't come down and do that. Now, people are going to think when they hear us talk about that, they're going to be like, "These guys are full of shit." But let's look at the truth.
Right.
People are seeing more and more, especially with technology today,
Aliens.
and capturing spaceships, craft.
Right, and
we can't explain.
like what Ron said is they may be here amongst us. And if you would have talked about this 50 years ago, they would have laughed you out of the room, just like if you had talked about Sasquatch.
Right.
But now with all the sightings, you can't discredit so many people. That's
my
why he says, think about it with an open mind and collect your own evidence, your physical evidence, then your quantum science evidence, because they're not, he said, they're not incorrect, either of them. They're just incomplete. You need to put them both together.
Right, and he made a valid point. These creatures are flesh and blood. They eat,
They poop.
they leave tracks,
Right.
and they make noise,
And they procreate. One of my
right.
favorite subjects.
That's right. And like he was talking about out in the hall with my book. I have a CD for sale with it, and he was talking about, which he didn't play during this little speech he gave.
Right.
That there's the sound of the male, the female, and he said, and you hear a juvenile. He said, and it sounds like the female's getting on the juvenile.
Yeah.
Disciplining him.
Right.
And I'm like, wow.
He's a very intelligent person. He knows what he's talking about, but I got a kick out of it when he's talking about his book, and he's like, I've sold well under 1 million copies. Yeah, but
And I think with this information getting out, people are going to request, because I'm going to try and find his book.
I'm gonna. He has two. I'm gonna try to find them both.
And the CD. I want the CD.
Right.
I mean, for our listeners, I am going to play you some of the sounds that he played, but I would recommend you giving credit to him where credit is due.
Right.
Buy his book, buy his CD, because this man has done the research. He's interacted with these creatures far more than we could ever imagine or hope to. Now, some of us, like me, I want my own sighting, but you know,
Right.
some people say once I get it, I may not want it.
Right. Yeah, but I don't know. Some people say it's a spiritual experience.
It could be.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, the first time I had an experience, it was so dark. I couldn't see too much. I seen the eyes, and I definitely heard the chatter.
Right.
Now, was it the samurai chatter? It was different than what I heard from Ron Moorehead's, but there was another one, the Sasquatch Ontario, where, man, I heard a clip, and I'm like, whoa, that's pretty damn close to what I heard. But anyway, I was scared there, but like we go out there, it's the fear turns to curiosity and thirst for knowledge.
It does. Well, here's the point that Ron Moorehead also made, and he said, I've heard people say it, and it has to be true, that there are different types. The type they interacted with up in the Sierras may not be the same type that we hear about down in Texas in the Big Thicket.
Or that we have here in New Mexico.
For one, they weren't aggressive toward them. They kept their distance, but they interacted.
Right.
But all the stories I hear about the Big Thicket, they'll interact with you, but in an aggressive way.
Right.
Saying you will leave or you're going to get hurt.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because Ron would always say that they never tried. We were hunters. We all had rifles and they were ready to go.
Right.
He said, but they never tried to get at us.
No, and like you said, they never took us away and ate us. I'm here. That's a Squatch dog if you hear it in the background.
Yeah, he's in training though. He's practicing on a toy,
On a rubber
but
duck.
he's ready to tackle a 15-foot Squatch.
That's right. And I do believe he'll lose.
Yeah, but he'll give us time to get away.
That's right. So, as promised, before we wrap this up, I'm going to let you all hear the sounds. So, listen away and tell me what you think.
Yeah. Do your own research, form your own opinion, and like Ron Moorehead says, most importantly, keep an open mind. He said a good investigator always keeps an open mind. He never like mocks or looks down on anybody's story until he does his own investigation.
Right. So here, have a listen for yourself.
Some sounds I'll just play for you. Some of them may be redundant, I don't know. The first one is a display, and it's just a display. This is the kind of sound we ran into the very first time in '71. This is a this is messaging with rocks and raps the way they do. Hear them going back and forth. They also whoop, but they message. We think they're messaging each other with rocks and raps. We don't know for sure, but that's what the suggestion is, because you hear one over here doing that, then hear another over here rapping differently. But they do it rhythmically, so there must be a message involved. At least we think there is.
All right, what'd you think about that?
Pretty crazy, ain't it?
Those were some unique sounds. Now, like I said, I've heard the Sierra sounds, but some of these other sounds that he played from the Sierras, I didn't hear those.
Right.
So that caught my full attention.
And I like the one that was talking to him and slapping something. Or,
Right, and just the way it made that.
Yeah.
I was like, man, if I heard that, I would probably crap myself.
Yeah, I probably would. But the next day I'd be like, oh, man, that was awesome.
Right, but he did say that when you hear him breathe, when you hear him talk, he said the tape recorder doesn't do it justice. He said because
Right.
you feel when
Yes.
they communicate. He said it's just so
It's-
powerful.
Well, you could feel the frequency inside you, the
Right.
vibration.
So and that there, and I could see why some people would get scared and say I got to go,
Right.
and I can't stay here.
Just like the predator theory in that the latest Bigfoot special. Remember when they had the big cat, the predators that they growl in a low frequency that you could feel,
yeah,
and it'll paralyze you. It was,
I want to say, I forgot what they call it.
Expedition Bigfoot.
But yeah, but no, there is, but there's
Infrasound.
Infrasound is what they call it.
Yes.
And like elephants do it, and
Big cats
big
could do
cats
it.
do it, and they say elephants can communicate. I don't know if it's true, like halfway across the globe because of
Right.
infrasound.
Yeah, and I believe it because it all has to do with frequency. Now, when I was in the military, I worked on radios, and we have some with certain frequencies, and what they do is called cascading. They bounce off the atmosphere,
Right.
And we could talk to people halfway around the globe.
Well, we know it cascades because that's how radio does.
Right.
Nikola Tesla is the one that proved that.
Right, but depending on the frequency, the size.
Well, that's AM, FM.
Well,
you know.
even FM, they're different sizes depending on the frequency.
Right.
And the smaller the smaller the frequency, you get a clearer signal. But some of them are only line of sight.
Right.
The other ones you give up some of the quality, but you get distance.
And that's why the radio stations have to pump out so much power so
Right.
that it bounces further.
And it fries us.
Right. Well, but those sounds were interesting, and you know what, people, let us know what you think about those sounds, man, because I mean they intrigued me. And you can let us know at latenightwithlarry55@gmail.com. And you can also hit the subscribe button, which we do appreciate.
Yes.
But we just thought that this topic, this speech that Ron Moorehead gave in this conference was, I just thought it was amazing. And I just happened to stumble across it, and I said, well, this looks interesting. Now, there weren't a lot of people in there, but I think this should have been like an arena filled with people to hear this.
Well, if I would have known, we would have probably been there if we could.
And it was just a little room with
Right.
very few. I was like, how did you not attract a lot of people to this? Because this was probably out of all the conferences heard,
The best.
this was the best one by far.
Now, they probably didn't put the word out good enough because a few years ago, when they had one at the college in Gallup, they were overwhelmed with their turnout.
Right. Well, and you could find this, and I encourage you to watch it, and you be the judge. And it's on YouTube, and just search for Sasquatch language, and I forgot the last one is, but if you do Sasquatch in language, it'll pop up.
Right, or search Ron Moorehead.
Yeah, and it's going to have a picture of Al Berry, who's the journalist. So
Right. Now, if you enjoy the subject as much as we do a little research, and maybe you'll stumble across something you think we should watch. And let us know. We'll watch it, we'll talk about it, and we'll see how that relates to the way we think, our perspective.
that's right. I mean, we're always out there trying to gain the knowledge and
Right.
gather the
Now,
evidence for ourselves.
We are just amateurs. We go out there, try to do our own field research. We try to do our own research on the internet. We listen to what other people have to say. But from what I gather, our techniques, we have a lot in common with Ron. So
Right.
I guess we're doing something right.
We are.
And some of that's common sense, though.
It is, and I'm just hoping, before I leave this earth, I have my encounter where I could say, just like the Eminem guy when he saw Santa Claus, he does exist, and maybe
Right.
we'll both faint like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't faint in front of a Sasquatch.
Right. But anyway, that's what we're going to bring you. We brought you tonight. We hope you enjoyed it. I wish I could play it for you and you listen, but there again, I don't know copyright issues and whatnot.
Right. Well, we're trying to get up and running on YouTube, so maybe in the future we could put links and you could follow
Right.
them to what we're talking about.
Right.
And
I could send you exactly to what we saw, but I would suggest doing a Google YouTube search and just like my brother said, Ron Moorehead or Sasquatch language, and it'll pop up. Watch it. It's about 50 minutes. He does also take you into the realm of aliens and elongated skulls, which are in Peru Paracas, which there again, we can't explain those.
right, and he does touch on that because once you dig deeper into all that, they all kind of tie together.
They really do.
And he even gets into the red-haired giants.
Yep. Which are
That's another rabbit hole.
That's another rabbit hole, and we know that those are supposedly hybrid, alien hybrids with humans.
Yes.
And we did a podcast on that, and that was on the Nazca mummies, and there's just a lot of interesting things that you weren't taught in school, and that are out there in this universe that you can explain, but everyone just wants to sweep them under the rug.
Right, and a lot of the stuff like the red-haired giants, they don't want you to know about because everything's been pulled from the museum.
Smithsonian
Yeah.
and everything. Yeah, so check it out, people. Let us know what you say. Shoot us an email, and we thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you very much, and give us some feedback. Love us, hate us. You want to talk with us.
That's right. Thanks for listening.
Peace.
Peace.